Don't get jealous, Shane. He's just my ex. There's nothing wrong with texting him at night. Those words, I'll never forget them. The way she said them, casual, dismissive, like I was a child throwing a tantrum over nothing. My name is Shane Coleman, and that night, lying in bed next to my wife of 4 years, I watched my marriage die in real time. It was 11:47 p.m. I remember because I'd been watching the clock, waiting for her to put down that damn phone. The blue light from her screen illuminated her face in the darkness of our Mesa bedroom, and she was smiling. Actually smiling. I hadn't seen that smile in months, not when she looked at me anyway. Not when she looked at our kids, Emma and Jake, at dinner that evening, while they chattered about their day at school. I'd gotten home late from a commercial job in Scottsdale, installing a new cooling system for a restaurant that needed to be operational by morning. My hands were still stained with refrigerant dye, my work clothes smelled like metal and effort, and all I wanted was to hold my wife, feel connected to the woman I'd built a life with in this desert suburb where we'd planted roots. Babe, can we cuddle? I'm exhausted from that restaurant job. The system was more complicated than expected. She jerked away like I'd burned her with a welding torch. Not now, Shane. I'm busy. The sheets rustled as I propped myself up on one elbow, studying her profile in the artificial glow. I could see the reflection in her eyes. Text messages scrolling, endless scrolling like some twisted digital slot machine. My chest tightened with a familiar dread, the same feeling I'd gotten as a kid when my father, Judge Mason Coleman, would pace the kitchen before delivering bad news. Something was fundamentally wrong in our house, in our bed, in the space where we'd promised to build something sacred together. Who are you texting? The question hung in the air between us like heat shimmer off summer asphalt. Silence. Her fingers kept moving across the screen with practiced efficiency, like she was performing surgery or defusing a bomb. The clicking of her manicured nails against glass sounded unnaturally loud in our bedroom. Paige. She sighed, that heavy, annoyed sigh that had become too familiar lately. The same one she gave Emma when our 8-year-old asked for help with homework. The same one she gave Jake when our 12-year-old wanted to show her something important from school. Troy. We're discussing business. Troy. The name hit me like cold desert wind in January, cutting through layers of denial I'd been wrapping around myself for months. I sat up completely now, the movement causing our mattress to shift, the springs creaking like old bones. Your ex-boyfriend. At midnight. While our children sleep down the hall. That's when she looked at me finally and rolled her eyes with the kind of contempt I'd seen her reserve for pushy salesmen and incompetent service workers. It's 2024, Shane. People stay friends with their exes. We're talking about real estate opportunities, investment consulting. You wouldn't understand. Don't get jealous. The dismissal in her voice was complete, absolute, like I was some insecure teenager instead of her husband, instead of the man who'd worked 16-hour days to buy this house, who'd held her hand through 2 pregnancies, who'd built Coleman Cooling and Heating from nothing so we could have the kind of life where our children felt secure. My hands were trembling, but not from anger, from something deeper, something older. I saw my father's face for a split second, the night he had sentenced his own brother for embezzling from their family construction business. Judge Mason Coleman, who'd told me when I was 12 years old, sitting in our kitchen while the family raged against him. Son, principles aren't convenient. They'll cost you relationships, cost you sleep, cost you the easy path. But the moment you compromise them, you become a man you can't respect. Can I see the phone? The question came out steady, reasonable, the voice of a man asking his wife for basic transparency in their marriage. Paige actually laughed, not a nervous laugh, not an embarrassed giggle, but a mocking sound that cut through our bedroom like a circular saw through pine. Are you serious right now? You don't trust me? She turned her back to me, angling the screen away, fingers still flying across the keyboard with renewed urgency. I watched the curve of her spine, rigid with defiance, and felt something inside my chest begin to calcify. Something caught my eye on her nightstand, partially hidden behind the lamp we'd bought together at a furniture store in Tempe 3 years ago. An expensive jewelry box, Tiffany blue, with silver clasps that caught the light from her phone screen. I'd never seen it before, and I knew every piece of jewelry my wife owned had been present for most of the purchases. Where'd that come from? I nodded toward the box, keeping my voice level, investigative rather than accusatory. Paige's shoulders tensed, a barely perceptible tightening that I might have missed if I hadn't spent 12 years reading people's body language on job sites, negotiating contracts, solving problems that require careful attention to detail. Paige just put the phone down, finally, screen going dark. "Please go to sleep, Shane." Her voice was ice, the kind of cold that creeps into Arizona houses during those rare winter nights when the desert temperature drops below freezing. A grateful client gave it to me. "You're being ridiculous." I lay back down, staring at the ceiling, where shadows from our neighbor's security light created shifting patterns across the textured drywall. My father's watch pressed cold against my wrist. The vintage Omega he'd given me on my wedding day, the one with the engraving I could recite from memory. Principles over comfort, always. Next to me, my wife kept texting her ex-boyfriend and smiling at messages I wasn't allowed to see. "Please, before I continue, kindly like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories." At 2:17 a.m., Paige finally fell asleep, her phone clutched in her hand like a lifeline to whatever world she'd been building without me. I was wide awake, staring at the shadows dancing across our ceiling from the streetlight outside, listening to her breathe with the kind of peace that only comes to people who sleep without guilt. I should have been angry. Any normal man would have been furious, would have shaken her awake, demanded answers, caused a scene that would wake Emma and Jake down the hall. But I'd learned something from watching my father navigate 30 years as a judge in Maricopa County. Something about the difference between reactive emotion and calculated decision-making. Anger is temporary. Decisions are permanent. I reached for my own phone, careful not to disturb the woman who'd just shattered something sacred between us. My contacts list glowed in the darkness. Dozens of names collected over 12 years of building Coleman Cooling and Heating into one of the most trusted HVAC companies in the East Valley. Tony Mitchell, my business partner. Maria Santos, Paige's sister who worked at the same real estate office. Detective Rodriguez from the sheriff's office, who I'd met at a Chamber of Commerce networking event. But I didn't call anyone, not yet. Instead, I thought about Emma and Jake, 8 and 12 years old, asleep in their rooms decorated with soccer trophies and artwork they had made in school. Jake had asked me just last week about integrity, about doing the right thing even when it's hard. It was for a school project about heroes, and he'd wanted to write about his grandfather, Judge Coleman. I'd told him about how a man's word is everything, about how you never compromise your principles for comfort, about how sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing. Now, lying next to my wife, as she dreamed about another man, I wondered what kind of hero I was going to be for my children. The next morning, I made pancakes from scratch, Paige's favorite recipe with fresh blueberries and real maple syrup, not the corn syrup substitute we usually bought at Costco. The kitchen smelled like Sunday mornings, like normal family life, like a house where parents loved each other and children felt secure about their place in the world. Emma bounced into the kitchen at 7:45, already dressed for soccer practice, her cleats dangling from her small hands. Jake followed 10 minutes later, moving with the careful dignity of a 12-year-old who was starting to understand that the adult world was more complicated than he'd previously imagined. "Good morning, Daddy." Emma climbed onto her usual chair, the one closest to the window that looked out over our backyard where we'd installed a swing set 3 summers ago. "Did you fix the restaurant's air conditioning? Is that why you came home so late?" "Yes, sweetheart. Sometimes people need cool air to keep their food fresh, and Daddy's job is to make sure that happens." I flipped another pancake, watching the batter bubble and set, thinking about the simple satisfaction of work that had clear objectives and measurable results. Paige walked into the kitchen at 8:23 a.m., already dressed in clothes I didn't recognize. Designer jeans that probably cost more than I charged for a basic residential service call. A silk blouse in Desir's rose that complemented her skin tone perfectly. Her hair was professionally styled, her makeup flawless, like she had somewhere important to be. She didn't say good morning to me or the children, just sat down at the table and immediately pulled out her phone. I watched Emma and Jake exchange a glance, that wordless communication children develop when their parents' marriage starts showing cracks. They'd been having those conversations more frequently lately, I realized, protecting themselves from adult problems they shouldn't have to understand. "Sleep well?" I asked, sliding the plate of pancakes in front of her, adding a dollop of butter and a generous drizzle of syrup the way she liked it. The kids were absorbed in their breakfast, but I could feel their awareness of the tension crackling between their parents like electrical current. She didn't look up from her phone. Her fingers moved across the screen with practiced efficiency, responding to messages that made her smile in ways I hadn't seen in months. That smile, the one she used to give me when I surprised her with dinner reservations, or when I fixed something in the house that had been bothering her. Emma finished her pancakes and asked to be excused, gathering her soccer gear and her water bottle. Jake lingered, studying both of us with the sharp intelligence he'd inherited from his grandfather. He was old enough to sense undercurrents, smart enough to know that something fundamental had shifted in our family dynamic. So, "This Troy," I said, after the children had left for the living room to gather their backpacks and weekend activity gear, keeping my voice conversational, neutral. "What kind of real estate are you two discussing? Investment properties? Commercial development?" Her fork paused halfway to her mouth, just for a microsecond. Then she recovered, took the bite, chewed slowly while continuing to text with her free hand. "Investment opportunities. Consulting work for luxury home security systems. Does it matter?" She still wasn't looking at me. The dismissal was complete, absolute, like I was some annoying neighbor asking intrusive questions rather than her husband, the father of her children, the man who'd worked 60-hour weeks to provide the lifestyle that allowed her to pursue part-time real estate work instead of the full-time office job she'd had when we first met. "You wouldn't understand the industry anyway." The words hit like a slap across the face. I'd spent 12 years building Coleman cooling and heating, had navigated complex commercial contracts, had learned enough about business to employ 6 full-time technicians and maintain relationships with suppliers across 3 states. Just curious. I took a sip of my coffee, studying her face like I was memorizing evidence. "Does he know you're married? Does he know about Emma and Jake?" Her coffee cup stopped halfway to her lips. Her left eye twitched, barely perceptible. The kind of micro-expression I'd learned to read during 12 years of marriage. The same tell she'd displayed when she'd forgotten to pay the electric bill, or when she'd accidentally dented the car in a parking lot. Of course he knows. She set the cup down too hard, liquid sloshing over the rim onto our kitchen table. "Why are you interrogating me, Shane?" "I'm not. I'm just trying to understand what's happening in my own house." "You're acting jealous again." She stood up abruptly, breakfast half-eaten, syrup congealing on her plate like evidence of a conversation that had gone nowhere. "This is exactly why I don't tell you things. You turn everything into drama." She grabbed her purse from the counter, another designer piece I'd never seen before. Kate Spade, maybe, or something more expensive. "Where are you going?" "Work. Maria wants to show some properties in Scottsdale today. High-end stuff. Luxury developments near the Four Seasons." Maria Santos, her sister, who worked at the same Desert Vista Realty office. The same Maria who'd pulled me aside at Emma's birthday party 2 months ago, concern etched in her features, and whispered, "Shane, I'm worried about Paige. She's been acting different lately. Secretive. Getting phone calls she won't take in the office. Just keep your eyes open, okay?" I'd dismissed it then, told Maria that Paige was probably just stressed about work, about juggling part-time real estate, with managing our household and the kids' schedules. Now, I wondered what else I'd been conveniently dismissing, what other warning signs I'd been too trusting, too comfortable, too principled to investigate. The door slammed with enough force to rattle the windows, and Emma looked up from her iPad with the wide-eyed concern that children develop when their parents' marriage starts showing stress fractures. "Is Mommy mad at you, Daddy?" "No, sweetheart. Mommy's just busy with work. Sometimes grown-ups have complicated feelings about things." But Jake, my 12-year-old, gave me a look that said he wasn't buying the diplomatic explanation. He'd inherited his grandfather's sharp intelligence, his ability to see through comfortable lies to uncomfortable truths. "Dad," he said quietly after Emma had returned to her tablet, "is everything okay? Are you and Mom having problems?" The question hit me like a punch to the solar plexus. Here was my son, barely into adolescence already, learning that the adult world was full of deception and disappointment. What was I supposed to tell him? That his mother was texting another man at midnight? That she was hiding money and jewelry and treating his father with contempt? Sometimes parents go through difficult times, Jake. But that doesn't change how much we both love you and Emma. You don't need to worry about grown-up problems. He nodded, but his eyes held the kind of skepticism that comes when children realize their parents aren't invincible, aren't always honest, aren't always right. After I dropped the kids at their weekend activities, Emma at soccer practice in downtown Mesa, and Jake at his friend's house for a gaming session, I sat in my work truck outside the soccer complex, staring at my phone. The parking lot was filled with other parents, other families navigating the comfortable routines of weekend activities and childhood milestones. I could call Tony Mitchell, my business partner, tell him what I suspected. Tony had been through a divorce 3 years ago, had experience with wives who'd grown distant, with marriages that had slowly eroded until nothing remained but shared custody and divided assets. But this felt different. This felt deliberate. Instead, I opened my laptop and did what any good businessman would do when something didn't add up. I researched. Troy Anderson, regional manager for Pinnacle Security Solutions. The company website looked professional enough. Clean design, testimonials from satisfied customers, staff photographs that seemed legitimate. But I'd spent 12 years dealing with contractors, suppliers, and service companies. I knew how to read between the lines, how to spot operations that were more style than substance. Pinnacle Security Solutions had 3 different addresses listed in the last 6 months. The phone number traced to a virtual receptionist service. The Better Business Bureau had no record of complaints, which was almost as suspicious as having too many complaints. I dug deeper, checking Arizona business license databases, cross-referencing corporate registration information, following paper trails that led through Delaware shell companies and Nevada bank routing numbers. The pattern that emerged made my blood run cold as winter air conditioning. Pinnacle Security Solutions wasn't just a questionable business. It was a sophisticated fraud operation, targeting affluent homeowners across the valley. The complaints were there, buried in Arizona Attorney General files, victim statements about fake security system upgrades, deposits taken for equipment that never arrived, promises of premium protection that dissolved the moment the checks cleared. My hands didn't shake as I scrolled through victim testimonials, photographs of families who'd trusted the wrong people with their life savings. That surprised me. I thought they would shake. Instead, I felt something like clarity, like the moment when a complex HVAC problem suddenly makes sense and you can see exactly what needs to be fixed. I thought about that jewelry box on Paige's nightstand, about the designer clothes, about the way she'd dismissed my questions like I was too stupid to understand sophisticated business dealings. I thought about Emma and Jake, about the example I was setting, about what my father would do if faced with evidence that his wife was involved in criminal activity. Judge Mason Coleman had sentenced his own brother to 5 years in prison for embezzling from their family construction business. The whole family had turned against him, called him heartless, said blood should be thicker than justice. But he'd looked at me that night when I was 12 years old and confused about loyalty and principles and said, "Son, the moment you compromise your integrity for comfort, you become a man you can't respect." I closed the laptop and called Detective Rodriguez. "Hey, Rodriguez, it's Shane Coleman from Coleman Cooling and Heating. We met at that Chamber of Commerce event last year, talked about small business challenges and community safety. I need to ask you about something, and it's personal." Detective Rodriguez's voice was cautious but friendly when he answered. "Shane, of course I remember you. Good presentation you gave about supporting local contractors. What's going on? I think my wife might be involved with a fraud operation." The words came out steady, factual, like I was reporting a broken compressor or a refrigerant leak. I've done some research on a company called Pinnacle Security Solutions, and the pattern suggests they're running a sophisticated scam targeting homeowners across the valley. An hour later, I sat in Rodriguez's office at the Maricopa County Sheriff's Complex, watching security footage that made my stomach turn like bad food. There was my wife, clear as desert sunlight, meeting with Troy Anderson in the lobby of a Scottsdale resort at 1:30 p.m. on a BC's Tuesday. The timestamp showed it was the same day she'd told me she was showing houses with Maria all afternoon. They looked comfortable together, familiar. Troy handed her an envelope. She counted something inside, then slipped it into her purse with practiced discretion. The body language was intimate, professional, the interaction of two people who'd done this many times before. How long has this surveillance been running? I asked, though part of me didn't want to know the answer. Rodriguez leaned back in his chair, studying me with the careful attention cops give to family members who might become emotional, might compromise an investigation. We flagged Anderson 3 months ago based on victim complaints. He's running what we call a long con, targeting affluent homeowners in Scottsdale, Paradise Valley, and parts of Mesa. Promises premium security system installations, takes substantial deposits, then disappears before any work gets done. We estimate he's stolen over $200,000 from Valley residents. Your wife started appearing in our surveillance footage about 2 months ago. I didn't connect her to you until you called today. 2 months. The same time Maria had warned me about Paige acting secretive. The same time the expensive gifts started appearing. The same time my wife had started treating me like an inconvenience rather than a partner. What's the evidence against him? Rodriguez slid a manila folder across his desk, thick with bank statements, wire transfers, recorded phone conversations, and victim testimonials. We've been building this case carefully, methodically. Anderson uses local real estate agents to identify potential targets based on property values and recent purchases. Then he has the agents process fake invoices to launder the stolen money through legitimate-looking business transactions. The agents think they're doing routine business development, earning consulting fees for client referrals and security. Assessments. Most of them have no idea they're processing stolen money until we show up with handcuffs and search warrants. I opened the folder with hands that remained steady, though my heart was hammering against my ribs like a pneumatic drill. There, on page 17, highlighted in the yellow marker, I saw the evidence that destroyed any remaining hope that this was all some terrible misunderstanding. Paige Coleman, Desert Vista Realty, $18,000 in deposits over 8 weeks, consulting fees for client referrals and security system assessments, payment processing through 3 different shell companies. The paper trail was thorough, damning, absolutely clear. She doesn't know, I said quietly, though the words felt hollow even as I spoke them. She thinks it's legitimate consulting work. Rodriguez studied me carefully, his expression sympathetic but realistic. Shane, that might not matter legally. When someone is processing this much money through multiple accounts and actively concealing the transactions from their spouse, ignorance becomes a very difficult defense. Your wife has been laundering stolen money and taking a 20% cut. That's a federal crime whether she understood the source or not. And given that she's married to a successful businessman who would certainly have questioned large unexplained deposits, the willful blindness argument becomes even weaker. What do you need from me? I asked. Rodriguez's expression softened with the kind of sympathy cops reserve for family members whose lives are about to explode. You don't have to do this, Shane. I can probably build a strong case against Anderson without directly involving your family. We have other agents, other evidence. What do you need from me? I repeated, because there was only one answer that aligned with everything my father had taught me about principles, about integrity, about the kind of man I wanted to be for my children. Rodriguez sighed, pulled out another file folder. Testimony about what you've observed at home, late-night phone calls, unexplained income, defensive behavior when questioned about new purchases or activities, financial records showing deposits that don't match her legitimate real estate income. And Shane, I need to know if you're willing to testify against your own wife if this goes to trial. Are you prepared to tell a jury about the lies, the secrecy, the way she dismissed your concerns and concealed her activities? The question hung in the air like heat shimmer off summer asphalt, wavering and distorting everything I'd believed about my marriage, about loyalty, about the woman I'd promised to love and protect forever. I looked at the photograph on Rodriguez's desk, him with his wife and 2 kids, all smiling at Lake Powell, happy and normal, and untouched by the kind of betrayal that was currently dismantling my family. My father was Judge Mason Coleman, I said finally. When I was 12 years old, he sentenced his own brother to 5 years in federal prison for embezzling from their family construction business. The whole extended family turned against him, called him heartless, said blood should be thicker than justice, that family loyalty should trump legal obligations. But he looked at me that night when I was confused about loyalty and principles and what it meant to do the right thing, and he said, "Son, the moment you compromise your integrity for comfort, you become a man you can't respect. A man who can't respect himself can't expect respect from others, including his own children. I stood up, buttoning my work shirt, straightening my shoulders like I was preparing for a difficult job that required precision and steady hands. "When are you moving on, Anderson?" "Tomorrow morning," Rodriguez said. "We're executing search warrants at his office and residence at 9 a.m., and we'll be making arrests immediately afterward." I checked my watch. 4:17 p.m. The kids would be home by 6. Paige usually returned from her Saturday showings around 7, full of stories about luxury properties and sophisticated clients who appreciated her expertise. "I'll be at my shop if you need me," I told Rodriguez. "And detective, call me the moment you arrest Anderson. I want to know the exact instant my wife's world begins to collapse." At 9:22 a.m., Sunday morning, my phone rang while I was replacing the starter in my work truck, trying to keep my hands busy with familiar mechanical problems that had clear solutions. It was Rodriguez. "We have Anderson in custody. Clean arrest at his office in Scottsdale." No resistance, but he lawyered up immediately. My grip tightened on the phone, grease from the starter motor staining my fingers. "And he's already trying to cut a deal, Shane, giving us everything. Names, bank accounts, the entire operation structure. He's trying to minimize his sentence by cooperating fully. And your wife's name came up first on his list of accomplices." The garage spun around me like I was suffering from heat exhaustion. Emma and Jake were at their aunt's house, safely away from whatever was about to happen to their family. "That's a lie," I managed. "She didn't know what she was doing." "Maybe," Rodriguez said, his voice gentle but realistic. "But Anderson has records, Shane. Encrypted messages, meeting logs, detailed bank statements. He's painting her as a willing participant, claiming she understood exactly what they were doing, and even suggested ways to avoid detection by structuring transactions under federal reporting requirements." I thought about Paige's defensive anger, her secretive phone calls, her dismissive attitude when I'd asked simple questions about our family's finances. I thought about the jewelry, the clothes, the way she'd looked at me like I was too intellectually limited to understand her sophisticated business dealings. "Booker," I said. The words came out cold, final, like a judge, delivering a sentence. "When the evidence supports charges, arrest her today. Shane, she's your wife. This will destroy your family, your children's lives." "She destroyed it already," I replied, "when she chose to lie to me and our children for 2 months. When she chose stolen money over integrity, when she chose to disrespect our marriage and our home, when she decided that her husband wasn't worth basic honesty or respect." "We'll need your testimony," Rodriguez said after a long silence. "Everything you've observed, the late-night calls, the defensive behavior, the unexplained purchases, the way she concealed her activities and dismissed your concerns. Your testimony will help ensure conviction. I know. Send officers to the house at 2:30 p.m. She should be back from showing properties by then. And Rodriguez, I want to be there when you arrest her. I want her to see my face when her choices catch up with her. I want her to understand that actions have consequences, that disrespecting a man with principles has a price." At 2:47 p.m., I sent Emma and Jake to their cousin's house for what I told them would be an extended playdate. Told them Mommy and Daddy needed to have a serious grown-up conversation about some important family business. Jake gave me that look again, the one that said he knew something significant was happening, something that would change our lives permanently. Paige's car pulled into our driveway at 2:58 p.m., her phone pressed to her ear, laughing at something Troy was saying. That laugh, the one I'd fallen in love with 8 years ago, the one that now sounded like betrayal and contempt. The unmarked cars arrived at 3:03 p.m., silent and professional. I met Rodriguez on our sidewalk, 4 officers behind him, hands positioned near their weapons. "Last chance," Rodriguez said quietly. "I can handle this without you being present. It might be easier." "No," I replied. "I need to be here. This is my house, my family, my responsibility." We walked to the front door together, my key turning in the lock with mechanical precision. Paige's voice drifted from the kitchen, where she was still on the phone with Troy. "No," she was saying, "the deposits look completely legitimate. Security consulting fees are normal in high-end real estate. Nobody's going to question routine business expenses." She stopped mid-sentence when she saw the officers, her phone clattering to our tile floor, like evidence falling into place. "Shane?" Her eyes found mine, confused and then frightened. "What's happening? Why are there police in our house? Paige Coleman? Rodriguez stepped forward, badge displayed with official authority. I'm Detective Rodriguez, Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, and participating in a criminal enterprise. The color drained from her face like water from a broken irrigation line. What? There's some mistake, Shane. Tell them they're wrong. You have the right to remain silent, Rodriguez continued, his voice professional and final. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Shane! She was screaming now, backing away from the officers toward our kitchen island, where we'd made breakfast together that morning. Tell them they're wrong. I didn't do anything illegal. Troy said it was legitimate consulting work. Ma'am, please don't resist. The officer reached for her arm with practiced patience. She jerked away, wild-eyed, looking at me like I could stop this nightmare, like I was her salvation instead of her judge and jury. Shane, please. It's just business consulting, real estate referrals, and security assessments. I swear I didn't know anything was wrong. Ma'am, hands behind your back. The handcuffs clicked with mechanical finality, echoing through our kitchen, through the space where we'd celebrated anniversaries and birthday parties, where we'd planned our children's futures and promised to build something lasting together. You knew about this? Her voice cracked like thin ice under pressure. You set this up? How long have you known? Long enough, I said finally. Long enough to know you chose him over us. Chose money over our family's integrity. Chose lies over the truth we promised to share. They walked her past me toward our front door, her hands cuffed behind her back like a common criminal, because that's exactly what she'd become. I love you, Shane, she sobbed. I love Emma and Jake. Please don't destroy our family. Her phone buzzed on the floor where it had fallen. The screen lit up with a message from Troy. Police just raided my office. Delete everything like we discussed. I picked it up and handed it to Rodriguez, who bagged it as evidence against my wife. I can't help you with this one, Paige, I said quietly as they guided her toward the police car. You made your choices. Now live with the consequences. 6 months later, after Paige had accepted a plea deal for 3 years in Arizona State Prison, after the divorce papers were signed and custody arrangements finalized, I sat in my backyard watching Emma and Jake play on the swing set I'd installed when our family was whole. Never, ever disrespect a man with principles. That's the lesson my father taught me, and it's the lesson I'm teaching my children now. Because when a man compromises his integrity for comfort, for love, or for the illusion of peace, he doesn't just lose himself. He loses the respect of everyone around him, including the people he was trying to protect. Sometimes love means holding people accountable for their choices, even when it breaks your heart, especially then.